Day of the campaign, I had a bazooka man behind a big rock. He was firing up into a cave with some Jap who had a machine gun. Now, that shouldn't have been a good matchup, a bazooka man against a machine gun. But you have to understand the kind of cover these Japanese soldiers had up in these caves. Now, this guy was an American Indian PFC Gill. Finally, he and his loader fired about 6 rounds up in this cave. Then he stepped out from behind the rock to look. The rest of us kept cover. Oh, hell, the machine gun broke loose again. Down went PFC Gill, ripped open his stomach. There was too much cover in those caves. That's one time a machine gun beat a bazooka. But what are you gonna do? Too bad. Peleliu was a bloody campaign. We just about lost this battle. To tell the truth, we lost about 50% of our men in the fight. Most of our guys got killed the first couple of days. The colonel who commanded the 1st Marine Regiment tried to take this one hill the first and second day and lost most of his men. His name was Chesty Puller. He was supposed to be the fightingest man in the Marines. They were trying to take Bloody Nose Ridge. Now, I was in the 5th Marine Regiment. Our commander was Colonel Lew Walt, and we respected him as much as the 1st Marine Regiment respected Chesty Puller. Puller got the Navy Cross. I always thought Colonel Walt deserved one, too. We were on the right flank of Puller, and he lost all those men. So they gave our regiment that spot on the line that he had. Lew Walt only lost 37% of his men. That's a hell of a lot, too, I guess, but too bad so many of them had to die. Later on in the campaign, me and Devereaux and a couple others were scouting along the north end of the island across from a small island called Engasiebus. Every once in a while, we would see coral snapping and popping like little firecrackers going off. What in the world is making the coral pop like that, I says. Suddenly, we all realized that someone was shooting at us from 500 yards away on Engasiebus. Man, did we feel dumb. We thought it was some kind of strange tropic phenomenon, and here's some Jap trying to kill us from 500 yards away. Hell, we found cover. What the devil? Now, on that part of the island one day when things were quiet and we had a chance to hunt for souvenirs, I found a saber hanging off a dead Japanese officer. That afternoon, some sailors come around looking to do some trading. One of them says to me, "Mac, I'll give you $125 for that saber you got." "Well, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I don't know if it's worth that much," I says. "Well, I'll give you $125 for it," he says. "What do you think, Jack?" I says. "Yeah, take it. It's worth $125, Jack says. "Okay," I says, and I laid it up on the rock next to the sailor. Well, the sailor pulled up this big bag, opened it up, and pulled out 5/5 of whiskey. He says, "There's 25, 50, 75, 100, 125. I says, "I can't trade 5 bottles of whiskey. I don't even like whiskey." All the guys in my squad says, "We like whiskey, Jim. We like whiskey." I shook my head. They were my buddies. "Go ahead, take the damn saber," I says. "You guys can have the whiskey." 5 bottles of whiskey, can you believe it? Some sailor took that saber home and pretended he was a big hero. He got a Japanese saber. And my whole platoon got drunk. Our battalion was a part of the force that crossed over to Engasiebus to take that island. There wasn't much to it, some bridges, a few fortifications. Once our tanks got over there, they blew the hell out of the fortifications. Now, my buddy, Jack Devereaux, was the fightingest man I ever saw. One night, near the end of the campaign, we were on the north end of Peleliu. Next to us were these 3 guys from the intelligence section. I think the sergeant's name was Dutton. In the hole with him was Ed Dunmore. I knew him pretty well. He was from Chicago. Robert Jones from Terre Haute, Indiana, was with them, who was the sergeant who was on watch. and it was raining. He had this hood over his head, and me and Devereaux were 20 yards away from them in the next hole, and we were hunched down with a poncho, keeping the rain off of us. The sergeant says he was on watch, and he had his helmet and his poncho on, and he was hunkered down looking out the hole. The first thing he noticed was a pair of leggings in front of him. In the middle of the night, all kinds of hell broke loose. The next thing he knew, something hit him on top of the helmet, glanced off his shoulder, cutting his shoulder. It was a samurai sword. PFC Dunmore held his arm up and got cut right on the forearm. PFC Jones got cut on the back of his thigh. All three of them got caught up. The next thing I knew, Devereaux says, "Here he comes, Jimmy, after us." The Jap officer was swinging that samurai sword over Jack. Jack yelled, "Shoot, shoot, shoot!" We both shot about the same time, and down went the officer right in front of our hole. He wanted to cut us up, too. We shot him with our M1s. He lay there and moaned and groaned for a little bit, so we put him out of his misery, shot him again. We got first aid for the 3 guys that were cut. They weren't in too bad a shape, cut here and there. They were lucky. About a month later, they came back to the outfit, and Devereaux gave them the samurai sword. Ed Dunmore. I could have gotten killed that night if Jack hadn't reacted so quickly. You never know. That Jap might have sliced my throat. Kind of funny when you think about it. Before that incident, we used to joke that if a Jap ever came after us with a sword, we'd just shoot him. That's exactly what happened. Now, this samurai was a captain in the Japanese Imperial Marines. They would die for their emperor. Me and Devereaux were happy to oblige them. If one man deserves a medal, it would be Jack. I swear to it. I remember one time they called for a volunteer to be an operator on one of those flamethrower tanks. It was a dangerous job. Nobody wanted that job. Devereaux stood up and says, "I'll do it." "I'll be right behind you," I says, "as far as I can get." They would take the tank to the front of the cave, and he would shoot the flame into the cave. He would shoot 5,000 gallons of flamethrower fuel into those caves. He probably killed hundreds and hundreds of the enemy. Nobody else was anxious to do it, but he volunteered for that assignment several times. Some of those guys that got medals over there ought to be ashamed of themselves. He never got a medal, and he should have gotten the Congressional Medal. We were on Peleliu till the end of October 1944. They told us that it would be a 72-hour battle like Tarawa was. Would you believe that? After 72 hours, we were still getting a foothold on the beaches. The battle lasted about 2 months. It was pure hell. This was the worst fighting I'd seen in the war. By that time, the 1st Marine Division had dropped down from 22,000 men to about 4,000, maybe 5,000, I don't know. Most of them were killed or wounded. On Peleliu, very few of the enemy surrendered. These Japanese soldiers fought to the death. I remember the day we finally were relieved. We were walking down from the ridges, completely worn out. Most of us had lost 20 or 30 pounds. We were filthy and unshaven, sick with malaria. A lot of the guys were glassy-eyed, like they were in a state of shock. The army had come to finish the job, and they were marching in the opposite direction back up the ridges to our old positions. I remember one dog-face yelled out, "Hey, Marine, I hope you left us some Japs to kill." "Don't worry," I yelled back. "There's plenty of them still up there waiting."